I'd like to just start with acknowledgement of country and then an introduction, and then we'll commence with the webinar contents. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we meet on today, here in Brisbane or wherever you're located today, and their continuing connection to land, water and community, and pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. I would also like to extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are here in attendance today. So I'll start with an introduction, and if we could just turn our cameras off, please, that would be terrific because it is a little bit distracting at times. I'll introduce myself. My name is Kevin McMurtry. I'm a Senior Flying Operations Inspector at CASA. It's coming up 12 months. I've been with CASA now, and previous to that, 30 years of operational flying, predominantly in flight training and Part 142 flight training as a head of operations and a flight examiner, instructor ratings, instrument ratings, class ratings and so forth. And that's predominantly my professional background in flying. The organisation, my experience, and also, I also have a research background, not so much in safety management systems, but safety reporting behaviours, and I'm also a safety management systems course facilitator at the University of New South Wales in Sydney for their postgraduate programs. My experience of SMS was implementing an SMS in a Part 142 organisation, and if I can just start by sharing just some high-level experiences of that, of the SMS, operation of the SMS. In times of crisis, emergency response plan, which is a component of or an element of the SMS, was extremely helpful for the organisation in managing a crisis at the time, and that was an accident. Throughout COVID, the SMS was very valuable in monitoring organisational safety in a time of a lot of uncertainty and communications, and in also times of simple hazard reporting, where there was an occurrence where with the fleet of aircraft, which are all the same type or model, cylinder head cracking, which of a number of reports that came in, which allowed the maintenance department to get on top of that, which could have been quite a hazardous issue if the issue went undetected with cylinder head cracking on this liquid-cooled power plant of this particular type of aeroplane engine. And also just like to talk about some, I've contacted a few industry operators just to share their experiences. Again, just some high-level experiences, and also of other regulators around the world. Transport Canada did a SMS post-implementation review on quite a lot of operators, over 2,000 operators in Canada back in 2019, and quite a lot of those operators said if there was no, with their SMS implementation and managing their SMS, if the regulations didn't require an SMS any longer, they would still use their SMS because it provided very tangible benefits in safety and cost benefits to their organisation. Some local experiences is that of one operator is the ability to detect trends that otherwise wouldn't have been detected in their operations. Another operator, once they establish their SMS staff, become a key source of safety intelligence in identifying hazards before they became an issue, which ultimately saved the organisation money. And one comment was, once the SMS is in place, it's relatively easy to maintain and manage continually. So the topics I'm going to look at: what is an SMS, why you need an SMS, SMS rules that are relevant to your organisation, what's an SMS implementation plan, Then we're going to have a walkthrough or a step through of 5 steps of SMS implementation planning, and then submission, and then just the how to submit your SMS implementation plan, and then what happens next, the review process. So if we have, first of all, if we just consider what is an SMS, well, if you look at an SMS, just 3 high-level perspectives. An SMS, once it's matured and fully implemented, becomes the way the organisation operates in terms of its culture and the people within the organisation. Once they're confident within the systems that are in place, they understand the systems like the reporting system, the feedback system, and the investigation process, and they trust and they're confident in reporting errors and their experiences. It becomes a cultural system that everyone embraces with encouragement. That's one thing I've observed myself and experienced. It essentially seeks out safety issues in your operations and the services that you provide, and it allows the organisation to develop any corrective actions to reduce any risks from any hazards which may be present in the organisation's operations. And then to monitor those corrective actions to ensure that over time that those risks have been appropriately managed and controlled. For policy and organisational perspective, an SMS it has a manual that requires 4 components and 12 elements of foundational parts of the SMS to operate, and it's a systematic and organised approach to managing safety, which comprises of policies and processes and procedures. Importantly, it identifies the safety accountabilities and responsibilities of key personnel and others in the organisation, not just the key personnel like the safety manager, the CEO, the head of flight operations, and so forth, but other personnel within the organisation and their responsibilities. And it documents policies and procedures of how the organisation manages safety. To a processes and procedures perspective, an SMS comprises the manual itself. Yes, your SMS manual is a policy document, and also a procedures document, which explains and describes the various different processes of how the organisation manages safety. And one of those is it enables the identification of hazards and risks that could affect your organisation, the assessment of those risks, and the prioritisation of those risks, the hazards and risks, and how they're going to be managed and mitigated to an acceptable level of safety to your organisation and to CASA and the aviation community, and the application of appropriate mitigation measures which to reduce risks to a sufficient level. So why is CASA asking operators to implement safety management systems? Well, CASA, being an ICAO member state, has an obligation under ICAO standards, specifically Annex 19, Safety Management Systems, that all service providers under the regulation of that member state must implement a safety management system. It's a high-level ICAO requirement. Why do you need a safety management system? To an operator's perspective, to maintain and improve safety to an acceptable level, to manage safety within the standards expected of aviation, and also other areas of community standards, what people expect the aviation industry to provide in terms of acceptable safety, and of course legal areas, not so much not just aviation law and regulations, but also other legal areas like workplace health and safety, and also from time to time it could arise where it could be like Fair Work Act type of legislation, which that may the Your Safety Management System could also protect the organisation by managing risk effectively. Importantly, the safety management system also, by virtue of its when mature and operating effectively, safety critical personnel, pilots, engineers are reporting and allowing the organisation to be aware of the hazards and risks in its environment. It protects against the direct costs, which are those very tangible and obvious costs of loss of and damage to aircraft and equipment, to other people's property, and so forth. And then and also the indirect costs, which are the costs that aren't so obvious and upfront, which interestingly can accumulate significantly and can outweigh the direct costs. Things like increased insurance premiums, clean-up of into accident sites, and those sorts of costs, and or ongoing legal costs, and the industry and social costs. If there's an accident or a serious incident in a small country like Australia, it's very we hear about it very quickly. If it's a fatal accident or there's any serious injury, this has an impact on the industry, especially if it's for people you know or an operator we know, or friends that have been involved in an accident. So that has a cost on the industry, and of course the social cost of loss of life. So an SMS, properly managed and mature and implemented, can protect against those types of costs. And an SMS can allow us, well, we don't need an SMS to see the obvious hazards and risks that we generally mitigate in day-to-day operations. But what an SMS does allow and permit and facilitate through the gathering and the building and development of safety intelligence, it allows us to build knowledge about the things we don't normally see, or things that people who work for us may not report or may not know that they should report, or that they simply don't report because there's not a system that allows them to report. So importantly, an SMS allows us to see what's below the surface or away from our operating base when we're not monitoring and supervising it at all the times. It facilitates the development of safety intelligence to see the things that aren't so obvious in our operation. The rules that are applicable to safety management systems, subpart 119.f of CASA and 138.bravo.6, dependent upon the type of air transport operator you are, rotary wing or fixed wing, or a relevant 138 operator, the safety management systems regulations are all predominantly the same in that they comprise of 4 components and 12 SMS elements, which are required by the regulations, which we'll have a quick look at shortly. I don't want to confuse anyone by looking at this slide saying, okay, there's different SMS requirements. For air operations, no, they're predominantly the same. There's just one small feature for air transport, which is slightly different. So that's just a sort of an overarching statement I wish to make about the SMS rules. The key dates to remember is that the SMS implementation plan is due on or before the 2nd of December 2022. And the next key date for SMS implementation is the submission of your SMS manual content on or before the 3rd of June 2024. So what is an SMS implementation plan? What it does, first of all, it allows you to do a gap analysis and then to prepare your SMS and develop it in accordance with the regulatory requirements. That was the 4 SMS components and 12 SMS elements that I described in some low-level detail a few minutes ago, which we'll have a look at those elements shortly. The gap analysis components of a SMS implementation plan, what it allows you to do, if you systematically work your way through the gap analysis, which we'll look at this shortly, it allows you to, and look, as an organisation, you may already have some existing systems in place how you manage safety. They just haven't been documented in a manual. They may be informal, or they could be in a manual, but they're not in your exposition or your operations manual. They could be in some other type of manual. It allows you to systematically work through the gap analysis tool that I'll describe and discuss shortly, and compare your existing and answer the questions in the gap analysis tool as a check to see if you do have any of these systems in place, whether they're presently existing and mature, or they're underdeveloped or absent completely, and then allows you to work out a plan to implement those over a period of time. The gap analysis, the implementation plan also allows you to identify the personnel that you will require to develop your SMS. But maybe one person, could be a number of people, it could be a team. The resources that would be required, and the tasks that will be that you need to exercise and execute for your SMS implementation. It allows you to start thinking about your requirements for safety personnel, safety manager, and also start to think about accountable manager commitment. And I'll use the language accountable manager, which in safety management system language, the chief executive officer is the accountable manager for the SMS, who is fully accountable for safety of the organisation. And it's very important I can't emphasise enough how important it is to get for the CEO and the account manager to be involved in the development of the SMS right from the beginning. And then the SMS implementation plan is you create a timeline for each SMS implementation task. Resources that are available, and we'll have a look at these in more detail shortly. There is an SMS implementation planning tool that is available in Appendix B of AC 119-01. You don't need to write all these resources down. You will receive an email either this afternoon or tomorrow that has a list of all the resources and also specific sections that lead you to some guidance material. And also 119-01 has got a submission process in Appendix C. So we'll walk through now the 5 steps of SMS implementation planning. Step 1 is to review the regulatory requirements. If you're an air transport operator, whether 121, 133 or 135, the SMS regulations 119.f. A relevant area work operator, specifically subpart 138.b.6. Don't be alarmed, they're not all different regulations for SMS. They all have the same SMS components and elements. They're not different SMS requirements for each particular part that you may operate under. I'm not going to go through each one of these elements in detail. I just want to outline that irrespective if you're a air transport operator operating under 119.190 safety management systems regulations, or an airwork operator under 138.145, the 4 SMS components and 12 SMS regulations elements are all identical, with the exception of air transport operators who operate aircraft with a max takeoff weight exceeding 2,700 kilos, or rotorcraft above 7,000 kilograms or 9 passenger seats. There's an additional requirement to implement a flight data analysis program. Step 2 is to perform your gap analysis. Once again, this is to sit down with the SMS implementation planning tool, which we'll have a look at shortly, or one that you develop yourself, and to look at the systems you may have already in place. You could already have an informal reporting system. You could be doing something like having management meetings monthly, and you talk about organisational safety performance. So you may already have existing safety systems in place. They just haven't been documented or formalised in any way. And the SMS implementation plan allows you to identify those, and then what work is needed to implement those into an SMS. So the SMS, so step 2, gap analysis, identifies gaps between current processes and those required for SMS compliance. Another important point I'd like to raise is you'll hear me referring to the 4 SMS components and 12 SMS elements frequently. An SMS, irrespective of the size and complexity of your organisation, it's important to develop your SMS in accordance with which is exclusive to your organisation, in the size of your operation and the complexity of the operation, and develop your SMS content based on that. But it's important to mention you have to ensure that each SMS component and element which is required by the regulations is developed in your SMS manual. We can't exclude any SMS components or elements based on the size of our organisation, whether it's a small 2-person operator or an organisation which has 25 aeroplanes and 80 safety critical personnel. Each SMS component and element required by the regulations must be in place. It's just the policies and procedures which will be scalable to your organisation is the important part to consider. The gap analysis allows you to identify existing systems and processes and how you can formally integrate these into your SMS manual and your safety management system. So if we systematically completed and accurately completed gap analysis, it will assist you in establishing a solid foundation for your SMS manual and your SMS system as a whole. And as I mentioned before, it's not just a manual, it's essentially a cultural system in your organisation that facilitates safety management for your organisation. So this is a page out of the SMS implementation planning tool in AC 119-01, Appendix B, and I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough of this, of its components and how to use this. So it's got the legislative reference of the particular SMS element, the source regulation related to it, and then the implementation question, which is a question which you read and you ask to determine if you're already doing something similar to, or you have an existing system or process in place, and a yes/no answer to that. Sorry, then the next column is where you would document. Incidentally, this AC, there is a Microsoft Word version of the implementation planning tool on the AC 119 download area in the supporting documents, which you can modify and insert as much information as you wish in there. The tool also has references to guidance material, which are related to the specific SMS component or element. In this case, does the organisation have a safety management system that is appropriate for the size, nature and complexity of its operations? AC 119-01, sections 3 and 4 are the relevant sections of that AC to provide you with guidance on developing your SMS content for that particular implementation question. And you also note down further, we've got the blue hyperlink information. That's to the SMS toolkit, SMS for Aviation, a practical guide. The booklet 1, SMS Basics, also provides is relevant information for that particular. So the tool has references to the guidance material throughout it for each SMS component and element. As I said before, it's very important to systematically work your way through each SMS implementation question to ask yourself, if we do have this type of system in place, if I don't, and then to identify that system. And if you do that systematically, it's an assurance to assist you in conformity with the SMS rules. It also assists when it comes around to evaluation of your SMS, and also assist in you developing an effective SMS framework for your organisation, in putting together an SMS which will be fit for purpose and to manage organisational risks in your operation. Another perspective also it's important to highlight is when working through these implementation questions, they're the same questions that when CASA assesses your SMS that we ask in the tools that we use. So they're identical. So if you're systematically answering these questions and then implementing the systems and processes that these questions are asking, it will facilitate hopefully a compliant SMS, and also not as much administrative work in reaching compliance in areas that may be missing when the SMS manual has been submitted to CASA. Another important thing to understand that not all of your components of an SMS will be immediately operating when you submit your SMS manual to CASA, or when you start using your SMS manual or your safety management system. For example, it may be the first time that your organisation has actually implemented a formal reporting system, whether that's a paper-based reporting system or an electronic type of reporting system. By virtue of submission of the manual, you may have a reporting system, but it's not actually operating until you've received reports. So some things take time to develop, and one of the most obvious ones is reporting. Reporting, people will only report when they're confident. Well, first of all, when they know that there's a reporting system they can use, they know how to use the reporting system, and also importantly, that they trust the outcomes of their reports, that once they report information, that it's going to be, the information is going to be managed in confidence, and then also taking into just culture considerations, which is another topic which we don't. This is not the nature of this particular SMS talk today, but essentially that people trust that their disclosure is going to is going to initiate change and improvements in the issues that they've raised, and they're not going to be punished for that. So we can, when you start working through the gap analysis, and this is just an example of accountable manager and senior management promoting a positive safety culture, just culture, in their that the safety policy states this, and demonstrate commitment to safety through active participation. The organisation may just do that by practice and by positive behaviours. The CEO, the head of flight operations, encourage people to report. But there's nothing formally documented. So you say, yes, we do this. This is just a normal practice in our organisation, but we don't have a manual that states we do that. States that we do that. So you could either I've just used the example here that it's an informal policy, and that's a trigger for you to know that we need to develop a formal policy and document that in our SMS manual. Does the safety policy actively encourage safety reporting? As I mentioned before, you may not have a safety policy and you may not have a reporting system. Or you may already have, people may come to you, to the head of flight operations door, knock on the door and say, I've got something to report. We've just been involved in an occurrence, but it's not formalised. So you already have a system, but it just needs to be formally implemented and documented in the organisation. Or you may have processes that just do not exist, which are required by the regulations. For example, is there a formal just culture policy in place? Does the safety policy contain safety objectives and safety performance indicators that are linked to that, and safety performance targets? If the organisation doesn't have that, well, there are gaps which need to be considered. So once we've done the gap analysis, then we can work out how we can implement these things, these 4 components and 12 elements over a period of time. The people that will be assisting and will be responsible for these various different tasks, the resources which are currently available, maybe people, may need to get some people in, and also resources that are required, software, hardware, and also the task, and then to identify the tasks and processes required, and then map this out on a timeline. And I will emphasise again the importance of the involvement of the CEO or accountable manager at this early stage of SMS implementation. So to start that commitment of the SMS, and importantly to understand the SMS and all of its components and elements, and how they all relate to organisational safety, or contributing to organisational safety. This is another page out of the SMS implementation planning tool in the PASA AC 119-01. This is where you start. After you've completed your gap analysis, you can start, sorry, this is before the gap analysis, an organisation description, an explanation of who you are, what you do, where you're located, types of operations you perform, and bases and so forth, who your customers are, the type of environments you operate in. You can also outline any existing safety systems that you may already have in place, whether they're informal, software-driven systems you develop yourself, or they exist in another type of manual, which isn't a safety management system manual. Internal and external interfaces, it's time to start thinking about how various different entities within your business, again, this is dependent upon the size, the nature and complexity of the organisation. Some organisations have an internal maintenance organisation. Therefore, what sort of hazards and risks do these interfaces introduce, and start thinking about that? Or external interfaces, such as external maintenance organisations, spare parts suppliers, fuel suppliers, airport operators, air traffic control at your local airport. What type of hazards and risks do these entities, could they introduce into your operation? To start identifying those, start thinking about those and how they influence safety in your organisation. Identify existing hazards and risks that you may be already aware of in your organisation, or if you haven't actually considered before, it's just start thinking about what they actually are. So this is just, again, this is extract where we've found we've got some existing informal safety processes, and we've got some that don't exist whatsoever. Then we can start populating these into the implementation planning component of the implementation planning tool. The people who are accountable and responsible, the CEO. That's what I said before, very important to have the CEO or account manager's commitment, involvement very early. Other people who will be involved in this process. You may already have a safety manager, or you're already looking for a safety manager. The phase of implementation, the date of completion of this particular element, and I've just populated that with some generic text of what to do about the resources required and the tasks and processes that will be required to be executed for that particular phase, or for that particular component and element. To help with each SMS implementation task, which may all seem overwhelming and confusing at first, sometimes it's a good idea to break it down into thinking about, does the SMS component, does it require the development of a philosophy, a process, or a practice? And that can help you differentiate the type of task that you need to consider when implementing your SMS. For example, a philosophy, a safety policy is a philosophical document, essentially. So any policy is, you can say, okay, it's a philosophy. We need to write that. We need to think about what we want to do for our safety policy in this organisation that is unique to us. Is it a process? For example, a reporting system. Safety risk management requires the implementation of the hazard risk reporting system. So that's a process which is required. Or is it a practice, a risk assessment tool, or an audit program? So you can say, okay, a risk assessment tool or safety performance and monitoring, that therefore I need to develop some type of audit on the SMS. So it just helps in working out what type of activity you need to develop by breaking it down into those three components: philosophy, process, or practice. Step 4 is starting to consider and think about safety personnel, determining the requirements, again, specifically for your organisation. The regulations obviously require a CEO, who is the accountable manager, and also a safety manager. We'll just touch on safety manager very briefly. It's because it's something operators need to start considering in the future in the development of SMS. But I'm not going to talk about this in great detail. However, the safety manager, it is a requirement of the regulations 119.delta or 138.bravo.4. There's various different ways to nominate and have a safety manager. It could be an existing employee in another role, like an instructor, a charter pilot, or someone who's not even in a flying role. It could be a part-time employee, or it could be a contracted employee. So there's many different ways of compliance and introducing a safety manager into your organisation. It's also important to understand, as I mentioned before, that the CEO, in relation to the safety management system, it's something that a lot of CEOs, and at one stage I was a CEO and I didn't understand this, is that the CEO is fully accountable for the organisation's safety and the safety management system. The safety manager is responsible for the day-to-day functioning of the SMS. So that's an important consideration that the key personnel must take in relation to their SMS, is the accountability of the CEO. And that's why it is important for the CEO to be involved from the beginning in the implementation of the SMS, is to understand those accountabilities and the safety management system and how it can assist the organisation in its day-to-day safety functions. There is some provision of this in the regulations that the CEO and the safety manager can be the same person, but only in unforeseen circumstances for a period of 7 days, so that there has to be a level of independence between the CEO and the safety manager. That's the regulations are written in that way for the independence of the safety manager to perform their safety functions adequately without any conflict of interest. The safety manager, however, could be another key person like a head of flight operations. The regulations do permit that. And there are processes, again, that CASA can consider for that to occur, and that can be a more enduring arrangement the regulations would permit. The fifth step is, once you've completed your gap analysis and the tasks for each implementation process, is to develop a timeline. And this particular sheet here has just got 3 phases. You could develop 4 phases, you could develop 4. It's entirely up to you in how you wish to do that. The implementation of your SMS components and elements, it doesn't have to be a particular linear process. It can be staggered in any particular order that you feel which is logical and also relevant to the workload in your organisation. And once again, key dates to remember: 2nd of December for submission of your SMS implementation plan to CASA, and then the 3rd of June 2024 for the SMS manual content. And then again, this is just an extract of populating the phase and the targets in the implementation plan tool itself. Submission of your SMS implementation plan. Instructions can be found in Appendix C of AC 119-01. Also on the CASA Safety Management Systems landing page on the CASA website, there is a tile within which you can access and open which provides instructions on how to submit your SMS implementation plan, including a form which is being developed it's a submission form for the submission of your SMS implementation, and all of those instructions are on the website or in the AC. Many of you have already received the CASA unique reference number for your submission. That email went out last week. Once again, I'd like to emphasise the importance of following the instructions in the submission of your SMS implementation plan and the form, using the unique number for your organisation. It allows us the team that will be assessing SMS and implementation plans to readily access your SMS implementation plan, as opposed to having to contact you in the event that you may have already submitted it, but just hasn't been identified. So what's after the submission of your SMS implementation plan? You receive an acknowledgement email from CASA. CASA will review your SMS implementation plan and provide feedback on that. And then throughout 2023 to the 3rd of June 2024, there'll be further educational material and webinars like this. We're just in the process of putting of developing what those webinars and that educational campaign will look like to support you and assist you in your SMS development throughout the next 18 months. Resources, once again, you'll receive an email at the end of the webinar or tomorrow, which will outline the resources, and also, importantly, it'll provide reference to each particular sections of importance to assist you of each of these documents. The SMS resource kit, very relevant to implementation planning. SMS booklet 1, SMS booklet 7 and 8 have got very good and high level of detail to assist you in your SMS implementation plan development. And of course, then the remainder of the booklets go through each 4 components of SMS and their associated elements to assist you developing your SMS itself. The CASA SMS webpage, as I mentioned before, there's a tile about creating your SMS implementation plan with links to the resources, and also on the bottom left-hand corner, the submission process for your SMS. I'd also just like to mention this document here, SMS for Small Organisations, which has been developed by an organisation called the Safety Management International Collaboration Group, which is a group of regulators, global regulators, which CASA is one of those members, who have developed numerous guidance books and materials for SMS. And this particular booklet, which again you will get this resource in the email, in plain English describes various different processes and development of your SMS manual, things like what are safety performance indicators and so forth, guidance on producing a safety policy and so forth. It's very helpful. Just about finished. What have we covered? We covered what's an SMS, why you need one, the SMS rules relevant to your organisation, the SMS implementation plan, then we walked through that, and then submission, and then what's next. And now it's time for any questions. Thanks for your patience. I know it's a bit of a lecture, but I wanted to open up time for people to ask questions as opposed to answering those questions throughout the webinar.
All right, thank you, Kevin. We'll just let Kevin just rest his voice for a sec, maybe get a drink of water. For everyone joining us here this afternoon, now's your opportunity. If you have any questions that are generic in nature or even quite specific in nature, look, please feel free to either type them in the meeting chat and we'll get to them, or alternatively, if there's an opportunity with the small number that we have relatively with us today, feel free to come off your mute and ask your questions straight up. But we have a question that is first up on our chat, Kevin, from Pete, who asks, is there any sample forms that we have available specifically for risk analysis?
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, there's a number of CASA ACs that have got some risk analysis guides, the booklets also. What I'll do is, if we could get we will get your contact details, and then I can email these to you, as opposed to me trying to remember what all their names are and what. Yeah, I'd rather document it for you. There are some available about how to perform different types of risk analysis and various different tools that will assist you. So yes, there is, to answer your question, but what I'll do is I will outline all those in an email to you, so I can point you directly to those sources. that's, I think, would be the most appropriate way to do it for you, because there are a number. There's two different ACs. One of them is an airwork AC. There is the AC 119-01 and also the SMS booklets also. But there are some others which I can email to you.
Okay, thanks for that, Kevin. Andrew Wallen-Brown, you've got your hand up. You can just take yourself off mute if you like and address that directly.
Thanks, Tim. Just a quick question. The implementation plan, once I submit it, plans are plans, things change, aircraft aren't delivered on time, things like that. Do I have to keep putting in another implementation plan over and over again if we change timelines or change responsibilities throughout that process?
It's Andrew, is it?
That's correct.
Yeah, good Andrew. Thanks for the question. It's good for you to document yourself. The expectation of CASA wouldn't be for you to keep submitting your implementation plan. Yeah, but I would encourage you to document yourself, because what that allows you to do is to reevaluate and look at it how, because it's essentially you manage, and you could also could perform management of change process in that, especially if you're introducing new aircraft into your operation and things like that. There's expectations that you need to manage within customers, within personnel, within a maintenance department. So I would encourage you to document that, but no, the expectation wouldn't be that you would need to continually. Well, for a relatively non-complex organisation, there wouldn't be an expectation from CASA to keep resubmitting your implementation plan. If it was a fairly complex organisation, it's something you'd probably need to discuss with CASA. But for the implementation planning process itself, fundamentally, no, you would keep updating yourself, but there wouldn't be a requirement to continue resubmitting it.
Okay, thanks for that, Kevin.
Thanks, Andrew. We have a text question from Ian Morris. Ian says, we've submitted our SMS and implementation plan back on the 2nd of June with the exposition. Do we need to resubmit with the latest submission form? Thanks,
Ian. Short answer is no. I'm checking as you would have received the email last week with your guiding you to submit your SMS implementation plan, and it provided you with your organisation's case number or unique CASA reference number. I am monitoring that particular inbox myself, and that seems to be the case with a number of operators. What I would encourage you to do is essentially you don't need to do any more, but I'd encourage you to maybe have a look at the AC 119-01 gap analysis and implementation planning tool to check that you have, in fact, that you're confident that you've met the regulatory requirements. That's all. But if you've stated that you've submitted, I'm actually triaging all of those operators at the moment. Yeah, and I haven't seen your name. I'm not sure what organisation you have come from, but no, essentially don't. But I would encourage you just to double check with the gap analysis that you do meet the regulatory requirements.
If I can just then jump in there, thanks for that, Kevin. Look, we did do that gap analysis and work through that tool, and I actually included that as well. That's West Coast Air Services. You may or may not see my name, but West Coast Air Services. And yeah, I think it's no problem to resubmit with the latest forms, and that's just why I'm here now, just to make sure we have ticked all the boxes and I've done sort of the latest requirements. So if you're the one triaging it, then will we get feedback once you've received our submission, or how does that work?
You will, yeah, that's true. I think the name of your organisation does ring a bell.
As long as it's a good bell.
You'll receive communication. Essentially, what will happen is that you've indicated you've submitted with your 2nd of June submission. That will be identified in CASA's internal systems. When it comes to reviewing your SMS, a regulatory service officer will then go and look for that submission, your SMS manual. So at this moment in time, you're to my perspective, you've done everything you needed to do.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks, Ian. Pete's just asked a bit of a theoretical question. This might be something that you could take offline, but given that we have, and by we I assume our country, given that we've never had a fatal high capacity accident, touch wood, how do we get that 1 to the 10 to -6 comparison, and what might be an appropriate number? Bit of a theoretical question there, Kevin. You may have to take that on notice.
I will have to take that on notice, but I could provide you. I could provide you some data on that, but it's that probably it'll take a while. So thanks for the question. It's an interesting one, and yeah, I can provide you an answer to a theoretical perspective, if you like, to answer that, and also a practical perspective.
All right.
We'll
no
get
worries.
That. Yep.
Okay. Stuart, thank you, mate. If our organisation has utilised an SMS, which has been submitted to CASA over several years, including resubmission for that 2nd of September deadline, and we received our new AOC certificates, do we therefore need to provide an implementation plan for the 2nd of December, I would assume? Our gap analysis showed full compliance even before the 2nd of September manual submission deadline.
Thanks, Stuart, for your question. Yeah, you're falling into the same category. I think it was Ian.
Yeah.
Is that so you've indicated that you've submitted a SMS. One thing to understand with SMS is the requirements of operators prior to the 1st of December 2021 is that there was no requirement for small charter and airwork operators to have an SMS, and some operators may already had one. And then the EX8721 deferred transition requirements have introduced this requirement for operators to submit an SMS, which CASA will review. I'm not sure if your SMS has been reviewed. That's something I would have to check because it's CASA may acknowledge that you've submitted your SMS manual alongside with your other material like your training and checking system and so forth, but it may not necessarily been reviewed as yet. So if you've indicated to CASA that you've submitted your SMS on a particular date, at this point in time, that's fine. You don't, if you've submitted a full SMS manual, you don't need to resubmit an implementation plan. That will get noted, and it will then, when it comes to time to reviewing your SMS, it will get a regular service officer will search for that, and then they will assign that to an inspector to review. And then you would expect feedback. But if you've already indicated in writing, and it's what I suggest you do, is to reply to the email that you received, which is asking you to submit your SMS implementation plan, state that you've sent it and the particular date you've sent it. In fact, what would make my job really is if you even submitted your SMS manual with that email, then I can see it, and that will then get stored in a discrete folder for your organisation. I'm not trying to create more workload for you, but it would just assist in our internal processes also.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Last couple, Pete's come back with a question about the manual authoring and assessment tool. Matt, what's he said here? When are we going to update the MAT headings to best reflect a template SMS? Probably a question for Alison Gosper, I'd say.
I can answer some. At this point in time, regarding an SMS sample manual or a SMS template in the manual authorization authoring tool, the current position at CASA is that not going to develop anything like that at this point in time. That's been the internal discussion at this point in time. But that could change. But that's the position at the moment internally in CASA. Yeah.
All right. And Nick, is there an MS Word or an editable version of the matrix and the form found in Appendix B of AC 119? Is anything like that available?
Yes, there is. Nick, if you go to the CASA website and on the search field of the CASA website, you just type in AC 119-01, and then that will take you directly to the AC. And on that little page, there will be the AC 119-01 safety management systems for air transport operators, and then it'll have a little. It'll have some text on the bottom left-hand corner which will say associated or related documents. If you click on the related documents, there is a Microsoft Word version of Appendix C, which you can use and modify and enter text. Yes.
Okay. And yeah, Pete just entered the chat just saying, yeah, probably not the best outcome in his opinion with regards to the MAT issue. But as you said, Kevin, that's where we're standing at the moment. Ian just had a quick follow-up. Shall I also reply to the email issuing the unique reference number and attach that to our SMS manual? Would that help?
That'll be helpful. Thank you. Thanks, Ian.
Yep.
Any more?
Go ahead.
With the questions related to supplying a sample manual, we do understand that. I particularly understand that myself. However, it's the position, and it's not just CASA's position. It's an ICAO position. It's an international, globally recognised. The development of a safety management system is something that regulators and ICAO would like to see operators take ownership for, developing their own policies that is highly relevant to their organisation, not just something that's been taken off a shelf. I know it's extra work, and I'm not going to dispute that an SMS, the development of an SMS is going to introduce a burden to the organisation in getting someone doing that. That's something that is can't be disputed. But it's important that the development of SMS is specific for the organisation, as opposed to something that is generic and modified. That's the contemporary perspective of SMS. I know it's very new to a lot of operators, but from my experience and experience of other operators that I spoke to, that once the SMS has been implemented, it's in place, the hard work is being done, it's quite easy to operate and to maintain. But we do recognise that there's considerable effort in putting an SMS together. Now, an SMS doesn't have to be a 100-page document. I reviewed an SMS last week for quite a complex operator, which is 30 pages. And it doesn't have to be a highly complex document. It has to be specific and unique to your organisation. But importantly, it must contain a policy and procedure for all 4 SMS components and 12 SMS elements, which are required by the regulations.
Yep. And look, Pete just added, a sample mentoring program might be something. I know that years ago, I went across to CAA New Zealand in Christchurch, and they ran a 2-day course for new safety managers, which was quite useful. But we have put out and are continuing to put out substantial amounts of advisory material and whatnot. Andrew, you just contributed to the chat by saying that there is a template available that you've just used. Thank you for that. Any more for any more at this stage?
Yeah, just a quick one, Tim. Just with
yeah,
that,
go, mate.
it's actually a very good template. There's everything in it. You still have to write a policy and things like that, but it's everything that CASA asks for. So nobody wants to do any more than what is sort of required to be able to get approved to start with until I see it working, as I have on a number of occasions. So I did get it off the CASA website. It is in there somewhere. I can dig it out again if I have to. But I just used it for a new SMS that I'm building for another job.
Okay.
I'll see if I can find it.
Thanks, mate. Okay. We've been going now for about 70 odd minutes. We appreciate all this feedback, guys. It's very, very it's very, very useful to us. We want to try and make these types of events as useful and as informative as we can. To that end, unless there's any more specific burning questions, I might ask Kevin just to advance to the last couple of slides and invite Fran to come on and just run this quick poll. Over to you, Fran.
Thanks, Tim. The poll should be now up on everyone's screen, and if they could answer that, that'd be wonderful. Thank you. Back to you. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks for that. Thanks everyone for your time and your questions. And what I do encourage you to do is you will receive an email sometime subsequent to this webinar, whether it's today or tomorrow. Feel free to any further questions you may have to respond to that email, and then they will come to me, and then I can I'll assist in as much as I possibly can with those particular questions. And I do encourage, because I do understand it, or we understand this is quite a new area for a lot of operators who haven't had any experience of SMS before. And we certainly want to guide people and organisations as much as we possibly can in developing their SMS for their organisation. So yeah, please send me any questions. Don't hesitate to send through, and I'll do everything I can to help out. And thanks for your time today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, look, we are running this seminar again tomorrow, again at 2 o'clock Eastern Daylight Savings Time. If you want to jump on again and hear some of this information again, or participate in the Q&A, you're more than welcome. Just jump on and register as you did for today. But I think that's just about it for me. Kevin, all good for you?
Yeah, thanks a lot, and thanks again, everyone. I really appreciate your time.